Today's meeting is sponsored by LastCon for our food and National Instruments for the facilities here. I'm Tiana Chandler, the chapter leader, and just listed here are other chapter leadership coordinators. And if you have any questions about the chapter, please come see one of us. Raise your hands for those who are on as a coordinator. So there you go. The way we have it now for this meeting is eligible for 1 hour CPE, and so if you would like to have a certificate of attendance, just please email me directly and I'll get you one. You can show support for OWASP with various volunteer opportunities, whether you want to get involved in our leadership, speaker opportunities such as speaking at one of these meetings, and participating in some of the local events. OWASP does have where you could select OWASP on the Amazon Smile if you purchase stuff off of Amazon, and some portion gets donated to OWASP. And OWASP is a 501c3 organization. As far as membership goes, you can attend these meetings and use other OWASP resources for free. You do not have to be a member. However, again, to show support, there are memberships that you can buy, whether it's individual, there's corporate memberships, and also there's student memberships as well. And this slide is just more of a reminder that we do have our mailing list for communicating out events through the Google groups, and you do not have to have a Google email account to sign up for it. So if you can go to austin.owasp.org, you can find a link there to sign up. Also, every week we have a study group that's also located here in National Instruments in a different building. I believe the study group right now going on is there's a LastCon badge game 2019 where they're looking at how to, I guess, experiment and do some other things with the badge game that's going to be used for LastCon this year. Did I say that right, Josh? Okay. And Matt Pardo is our education coordinator, and he can be contacted if needed if you have any questions. There's a Slack channel on Austin OWASP for the LastCon badge game 2019. LastCon is our annual conference. It's coming up in October. It will be our 10th year anniversary, so we're planning on it to be an extra special. We have keynotes already lined up. Discount tickets are still available, and our CFP and CFTs are closed, and we should be announcing the schedule soon. If you wanted to see more information, you can go to lastcon.org. Upcoming chapter meetings, we have a placeholder here for OWASP Boston training. We have been trying to see what other training we can provide besides what we do for LastCon, so just stay tuned for that. Also, the Austin Security Professionals Happy Hour. Unfortunately, we still have been struggling with getting our sponsors. So if anybody knows of any company that would like to sponsor Happy Hour, please contact me. So and we have 2 more that we do this year. So we would really like to continue that. Oh, and we usually, for right now, we have it set up at Baby Acapulco's that we would have the Happy Hour on the 2nd Thursday from 5 to 7 of every month. The cost would be, just to let them, we usually have those sponsors pay the tab, and between $750 to $1,000 is what we ask them the budget. Other upcoming local events, just have a few of them listed here from the different organizations in the local area, and I don't know if anybody else knows of any others that they would want to mention real quick. Okay. Yes. So I'd also take the time now is if anybody's working for a company that has job opportunities, job openings, we can take a moment to have those announcements. Does anybody have anything?
Yeah, Mark Spears of Solo Security. We're located here in Austin, over by 183 and Mopac. And we're looking for maybe like a junior level pen tester for web application sites. So we got other stuff coming up, but I'm just looking for that one right now. So
thanks. Okay.
Under Armour is looking for an application security architect, pretty senior role in doing AppSec and also cloud security.
Okay, thank you. What's that? Well, I think it's going to be next. Here you go. Hold on a second.
Hey, so real quick, Tian doesn't even know this yet, but we have a conflict in this room for next month's meeting. I am currently working on trying to get NI to pay for us to move over to Norris Conference Center. Stay tuned for that announcement, but don't just assume next month to come here, because I know we come here all the time, but I'm working on that, so heads up.
And so I would be emailing that on our the Google Groups list, as well as posting that on our the awesome.owas.org wiki, is where we also list the different upcoming events. And so now I would like to present Shirish Patil for data loss prevention.
Sorry. Stop share. There. Now we can share.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Hi. My name is Shirish. Just a quick thing about me. I am in the IT industry for about a couple of decades. I've been working with data, designing, architecting data solutions, databases, and security on the databases, whatnot. That's pretty quick. The industries I'm working on is I have worked with government agencies, private organizations like companies like Verizon, Duke Energy, government agencies like Health and Human Services. Most recently, I'm helping the Department of Transportation with defining their enterprise information strategy for short-term, long-term, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, what they can do better to utilize the data they have so that it brings on more value for them. What are the ways they can implement solutions, and not just only like shiny IT solutions, but what brings more business value, what helps them to extract more value out of that and in terms of business. Today, I'm here to talk about data loss prevention. It's a pretty simple term, a pretty broad range. When we talk about data loss prevention, I don't know if all of you have heard the news last night, Capital One, before that Equifax, Facebook, the list goes on. So it's important for the organizations to deploy technologies and solutions to prevent the data, to protect their data, so that it doesn't go in the hands of people who don't have authority to access it. Now, what I mean by that, and why everybody's after data. Let's think about that for a while. Just maybe a couple of years ago or 5 years ago, the most valuable resource on earth was oil. That countries have been made really, really rich, filthy rich, by using oil as their resources, selling oil, processing oil, so on and so forth. In 2017, the economists came up with this idea that data is the new oil. Some even contested that. They said, no, data is not even new oil. It's the new plutonium. Some said that, no, it's completely garbage. No, oil is still the most valuable resource. But regardless of which side we are on, data has its value. And I'm sure that all of us would agree to that. Now, let's think about that. How many of you have heard these numbers in the last few weeks, on and on, over and over again? $5 billion was the fine which FTC put on Facebook. $700 million settlement was done by Equifax. And why did they do it? Because they didn't either follow the regulations and shared the data with unauthorized parties, which obviously is the fine for that they are not supposed to do that. Equifax, supposed to protect our data, right, is the pinnacle of all the credit reporting and our private data. They still settled. Now, these numbers are huge, even much bigger than some of like the total revenues or total income of some of the large companies. Why even companies are settling for that huge amount and paying for that and still in the business? You know, these numbers or this much amount may be peanuts for those large companies because they know that the data they have and the value they can extract in future from their data is still much more. They can recoup this amount and, you know, still cover up for their profits. I'm not sure if you all have heard this or you all have seen this this visualization. That's the website on the bottom. It's a pretty cool visualization where all the world's biggest data hacks in the last couple of years is being posted. And so this is like a static picture, but if we go to the website and if you hover over any of those circles, it will give that information. But just look at the numbers. I mean, every day you can wake up and you can hear about a new data hack. You know, it's like that. The number of users affected, and the interesting thing is that these hacks are going on for a long time. It's not that, you know, suddenly this morning the company found out that, oh, they are being hacked, and then they have put it out in the public. It's been gone for months. If you heard about Marriott hack, it was going on for months. The company knew about it. They didn't do anything about it. Or they did, but they didn't publicly announce it. So why these hacks are happening? We all are security professionals here. We all know that anybody who wants to access that unauthorized data or wants to have some value out of that data knows there are vulnerabilities in the system which they can exploit. Like Capital One last night. There was a configuration vulnerability which some insider knew about it and exploited it to gain access to their data. So there are all these points of vulnerability where the leaks can happen, and people who want to, or people who have malicious intent to extract and to exploit those vulnerabilities knows where to attack or where to point their solutions to get that data out. Now, what we can do? So we are going to answer two questions today. What is data loss prevention in all the contexts I talked about till now? And the next question we are going to answer is how? How these DLP, these are called by different names, and I'll go by those different names. But these technologies are there to protect the data, to deploy those policies, procedures, tools to protect the data for the organization. Now, these different aspects that DLP solutions can do is protect. Obviously, we talked about protecting the organization's data. They can even monitor, like the threats from outside or inside. The solutions in place may have policies and rules inbuilt so that they can monitor the security incidents and then report on it. Can also prevent. When I talk about prevention, that means it can prevent the loss of reputation, which seems ironical because companies can get by paying fines. But still, the loss of reputation for the organization is huge if the data is breached. And then the last is comply. There are several acts in place, like HIPAA policies, like PCI, like GDPR. Those are different rules, policies in place today where companies can comply using these DLP solutions. What these DLP solutions mean and what they do and how they do it. So when I talk about DLP, people call them by different names. So data loss prevention can be called as data leak prevention, data leak protection, extrusion prevention, control, content monitoring. So there are different names these goes by, but finally what it means is the different ways, policies, processes, and tools combined act together to protect organizations' data based on the defined rules. That's all these DLP means. There are three different ways where the data can move or data can go out of the organization or move from one place to another. It can either go through a network, can be on a storage, or through endpoints, like the application endpoints or from the PCs. But finally, even of these three different ways, the data is always in three states. Either the data is in motion, it's moving, data is at rest, or data is in use. When I say data is in motion, that means that the data is moving through the networks from point A to point B, and if there are vulnerabilities within that network, that can be exploited by people with, if they want to access that data. Data at rest, you store data in databases. Obviously, if I have access to a database, and if the data is not either encrypted or if it's not appropriately access level controlled, then if I can log in and see all what is in the database, then I have access to all the data. So the data at rest is also important. And then data is in use. If the data is just a very simple example, social security numbers. So if an application is supposed to show the social security number, it shouldn't be like a plain text, or it should be masked. So all these things, there are various ways the DLP solutions can implement and protect the data. Now that was all about how it or what are the various ways, but what technologies the DLP solutions implement. There are two very important things here. It's content aware and context aware. So when we talk about content and context, think about a simple mail we get at the home. So you have an envelope and you have a mail inside that envelope or a printed document. So the document inside has the content, and the envelope has some context about it, like from whom it is coming, or all the sender's information, so on, and so all the additional information about what that document means. So that's the difference between content and context. All the DLP solutions currently available use these listed techniques, either one or more, to fulfill the intended purpose of that particular solution. There are rule-based or regular expression-based solutions where it's just like simple. So this is the most common solution available, where it's like say the credit card is in this format. So that's and the rule says that if this is the format, if I see in the data, then that's the match, and that's where that rule will come into place and process that data. Another is the database fingerprinting. Why it's called fingerprinting? Because we all know if you go to a driving license office or anywhere, if you fingerprint it, if it's not matching, you always say either clean your thumb or clean the scanning surface, and then you do it again, and it matches, and that's where the person who is processing your application moves forward and says, oh, it's perfect match. So DB fingerprinting technology or techniques are used to do exact match, apples to apples match. They are exact file match. This is more relates to where we talked about content and context. And each of these techniques have pros and cons and various applicability on which kind of scenario, which particular solution is more applicable, or which will give you more benefit for the solution in place. Then there's partial match, where you can do partial match and flag the data if it violates the policies. Statistical analysis, obviously it can go all tech savvy or all like high-end solutions, more sophisticated ones, machine learning based, artificial intelligence based, Bayesian analysis based. All those solutions can come into place where you have large amount of data to process and see if it violates any of the policies. Conceptual or lexicon. So this is pretty loose term which is used when it says that I don't know what I'm looking for, but I have an idea. This may sound like this. This may have like a yellow color. It may be a one page. It may have 10 lines. So this kind of matching technique is used where you have a concept, an idea, and those ideas are put into place as a rule, and then the matching is done to find the violations. But this is more, it will bring more, obviously more false positive because it's not clearly defined. Final thing is categories, where it's all predefined. We have pre-built categories, and the technology or the tool processes data and see if it fits into any of those pre-built buckets. It talks about content and context awareness, and as I said, most or all the tools available today may not deploy all of them, may deploy one or may deploy one or more. It perfectly depends on what scenario or what situation that tool is implemented to address. We talked about all the tools and techniques and all specific targeted solutions. What, in my personal opinion, is the most vulnerability today when it comes to the securing the data of organization is, we say, BYOD. So anybody knows what this is? It's phone, right? If I do that, maybe like say 10 years ago, it would be a simple phone. Today, I don't think this is just a phone. I'm carrying a laptop or maybe a more advanced device in my pocket. I can do pretty much everything using this device, which I can do using a phone or a laptop or a tablet or anything else. So, and everybody has phones, smartphones. We are becoming much smarter, right? But when we bring on these devices at our workplace or any place where we go, and we hook onto these devices to that network, obviously there are protections in place, but still we can access a lot of information on those devices. So those bring your own devices, it definitely needs a mobile device management policies in the organizations which can protect this secure data. I remember an incident at my last workplace. One of my colleagues was using his phone for his work all the time because he was almost working 24/7, used to do everything else on his phone. And so when you configure your email on the phone, it gives an option that are you giving admin authority to the organization. And guess what? He did, because he has to access his phone on the Outlook app on his phone. So now he was using his phone to obviously take pictures. We don't carry any of the phones or the smart cameras anymore, right? We use phone to capture our moments, everyday moments, because we have like high definition cameras in these phones. So he has his almost like couple of years worth of pictures of his family pictures on that phone, and something happened. The admin on the organization completely wiped out his phone. He lost all his pictures. Now, think about that. It's not organization's data, but it's still somebody's personal data, right? So when we do bring all these our own devices, and the organization allows those devices to be on the network of that organization, it's really important for us to make those smart decisions that what we can do with those devices, so that we don't lose our data, and obviously the organization doesn't lose their data. The second vulnerability, I would think, everybody go through these upgrade process, right? A new shiny iPhone 11. I want to discard my iPhone 10. Want to go get iPhone 11, right? The new version of Mac came, new version of Windows desktop came, or whatnot. But the devices are getting upgraded almost every day or every few months. There's a cycle where it gets upgraded, and we are much more interested in going to a newer version. Even organization goes through those upgrade cycle where the old devices are discarded, and we get the new devices, new laptops, new phones. Have we ever thought what happens to all those old devices? What we do when we do upgrade, do we really clearly wipe out the data on those devices? Most people do, right? But some of the people don't. So I was recently reviewing a paper for a technology university. It was in Ghana Technology University. They did a research they have an e-waste dump site. And they did a research to identify if they are able to extract data out of the e-waste they have on the dump site. What they did, they scanned through the dump, extracted all the hard drives they have, and guess what? They were able to extract data from 78% of the hard drives. 78%. So all these devices where we are upgrading, I think, so those two are the most vulnerable points. Obviously, there are configuration vulnerabilities and simple steps there. Don't put admin, those kind of password combinations. So those are like simple checks and balances we can do. But these are maybe often overlooked vulnerabilities, which if we address, maybe we can be much smarter and protect the data in that sense. That's all for me. You all have any questions for me?
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, starting with your story about the cell phones.
Sure.
As we get newer and newer models, they go into deeper and deeper biometrics. Yep. That are available. I mean, I don't have to wait for someone to throw it away. I could just grab it, I would think, if I know how to break it. Do they know how to break it and get your biometrics?
It's not. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I would put it in a different way. It's not about breaking it. So we are using our fingerprints or thumbprint to scan or log in into device, right? Let's say face detection. That data, if we don't appropriately configure the devices, does it really stays on the device? Is it going anywhere else? And what else is happening from that data?
I'm thinking of like the new Apple has infrared, fixed up infrared.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great source for deeper biometrics than just a picture of me. If you
Yep, absolutely. And when the whole repository of such images is stored somewhere, it's important to. Well, I think it depends on the configuration where, how much we are allowing the phone to share data back to the Apple servers or any of the provider servers.
Questions?
Thanks for the presentation. I was kind of curious. I know when we talk about data loss prevention, a lot of time it's personal data or sensitive data, but I have kind of unique kind of requirements where I have to protect intellectual capital, source code. I was just if anyone has any experience, trying whether any of the DLP tools out there kind of help in that, how to protect source code, especially dealing with engineering lab where we have to deal with other customers source code, and we need to make sure that the source code doesn't get leaked out.
That's a great question. So I wouldn't go by the vendors, but I would go back to one of the slides we talked about, and it definitely talks about that, where we do partial matching. That's one of the technologies is being used by the solutions or the DLP solutions to do the source code protection. So that's the partial match. You can set up the rules and based on if this, then what, so those kind of setup can be done. But the partial match is the technology that can be used or technique in this context content awareness.
So I'm trying to understand some of the strengths and weaknesses you pointed out for these. And so, for example, with an exact file match, all you got to do is add some bits to the end of the file to evade it because it no longer is an exact match, right? But when you say that that partial match is trivial to avoid, how do you mean?
So, like I was explaining, so you define something so I have a source code. You're defining saying that if out of these source code or out of these 10 lines, if these 10 characters or 10 words are matching, then that's the match I have. If that rules is not, or if that 10 characters are not defined appropriately or can put any garbage in that, then it's easier to, I don't want to use a void word again, but it's exactly that. It's easier to basically fool the solution or bypass the solution.
When you're talking about e-waste, a lot of devices that people don't think about, or one device that people don't think about is a printer with a hard drive.
Absolutely.
And also, you should actually check the platen to make sure that it doesn't have paper on it. There was a big expose several years ago. It was 60 Minutes or somebody like that. Anyway, they went to this printer warehouse and they found that the New York Police Department had left warrants on the platen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Information about children that have been sexually abused was amazing.
Yep. So it's a great point. So definitely, whatever we print in the organization, if it's sensitive, like I think HIPAA is the policy which controls, how. At least when I was with Health and Human Services, HIPAA was the policy which was controlling, how to safeguard the documents you have. If it contains PII, then how you can discard it, how you can dispose it of. All those policies are defined. But only defining is not enough, right? Somebody needs to implement those. And if people are not implementing, then we are left with the vulnerabilities we have in place.
Any other questions, comments?
Hold on, over here.
Yeah, for decommissioning hardware and drives, especially for like AWS and whatnot, when you have data that's sitting on those systems, what type of data decommissioning or data wiping do you recommend? Because what we've seen is obviously the easiest way to get data is looking at old hard drives and old systems. It just people don't race, just like what that last lady said about the printers.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the research I was talking about. What they did in that research, so there are like technology solutions which are available to wipe the data off completely, remove the data from the hard drives. But this is the interesting find. What they found out, that almost it is possible every time to recover data unless you physically damage the hard drive. That was interesting to me too, that, you know, they're going back ages, just going back, resorting to the old, so let's say if you have a paper, if you just tear it out in multiple pieces, it's extremely difficult to put it back together, right? Same way if you damage the drives completely, or then you put on encryption solutions. So, but if you're discarding it, it doesn't help. So, not sure if it answers the question.
Anybody else?
So I have a question for everyone. LastCon is our conference that we sponsor in October. I think most people in the room probably already know about LastCon. Is there anyone in the room who's thinking about going to LastCon but still sitting on the fence, still undecided? A couple of people down here. I don't believe it. One of our presenters here. So I'm going to announce a discount code for everyone in the room, OWASP chapter members or visitors. Discount code for LastCon this year. This is valid only through September 30th. OWASP Austin, all one word, capital OWASPA USTIN. Okay? 10% off, everybody. Sorry? If you do the math and find out you've been cheated, I'll fix it for you. Okay? Let me know. Seriously. Okay, that's it, folks. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.